Hey team, Yasin here, and in this training we're going to be going over connecting it all together. So this is going to be a little bit of a bridge training that's going to go ahead and really work on connecting everything we've been talking about so far. Of course, why is this training important? We are continuing our theme of launching your remote wellness practice version 1.0, as well as completing the final trainings for you to go ahead and get your remote wellness certification. So let's go ahead and jump right into it and talk about what this training is about. So like we just said, what we're going to be doing inside of this training is we're going to be going ahead and connecting everything that we have built so far in this module to make sure that you are 100% solid before we actually get into the action time. Now, why is that important? The reason why that's important is because in the action time training that is going to be upcoming is that it's going to basically be time, surprise, for action. And so what you're going to be doing is that you are going to go ahead and go out there and get your first 2 to 4 test practice students, regardless of that is going to be a test practice student who is paid, a test practice student who is for charity, a test practice student as LBO. It doesn't matter because a test or practice student can be for whatever purpose, but those are going to be coming from your warm market. Okay, so you want to remember the goal of these first 2 to 4 test or practice students that you're going to be enrolling into your transformation program is for you to go ahead and get a better feel of the entire A to Z process around the product. So that way, everything that you have learned thus far inside of the certification program, A to Z, you are able to go ahead and practice that with somebody who is not actually a part of the program with you. Because up until now, you've primarily been working with existing RWA students. And so it's now a matter of expanding that a little bit more and saying, okay, you know what? Maybe an RWA student is somebody who is 100% understanding of the struggles that I am going through, right? Now I'm going to go ahead and go into my warm market, right? The people who kind of already know me a little bit. I already have a little bit of that know, like, and trust factor. And now I'm going to go ahead and expand my capability and my certainty and my confidence around being able to help somebody else. And then what we're doing is we're slowly going ahead and progressing your confidence and your certainty and growing that so that way you can go ahead and eventually get to colder markets. And the reason why this is so important is so that way you can actually go ahead and get a lot of your nervousness out and get more comfortable with the entire process. So that way you can go ahead and get ready to deal with those prospects from cold markets. Now, what does it mean cold markets? Cold markets means people who are strangers, who are prospects that don't already know you, right? And the reason why this is important is because cold markets can be ruthless, they can be mean, they can be harsh. It can be extremely difficult to build trust with somebody on the internet, especially somebody who saying, hey, you know what? You just met me on the internet. How about you go ahead and join my program for $1,200, right? And so when you're a beginner, it's very difficult because you might not believe in yourself yet. You may not have certainty around the process. You may not have certainty around the value that you provide. And so you have all of these feelings, all of these emotions, right? It's not so much that the business process and this entire process that we're walking you through is complicated, right? No, it's very simple, but it's hard because in the beginning, you got to manage a lot of your mental baggage that you have. You have a lot of mental drama as a beginner going through this process. And so what we're doing is we're slowly easing you throughout this entire certification process to make it easier and easier and easier for you to build that confidence, build that certainty, so that way you can start to deal with people and strangers on the internet. You can have confidence on, hey, I am a remote wellness practitioner. Hey, I am a health coach. Hey, I am a remote wellness coach, or whatever label you decide to go ahead and call yourself, right? Hey, I am an health educator, or whatever it might be, right? And so once you have that identity, once you've gone ahead and embodied that, then it's very easy for you to go ahead and focus on marketing and sales because of the fact that your conviction is there. And so that's what we're doing here, is that in the action time training, we're slowly building that up. And then inside of this training, we're going to go ahead and really just bridge everything together and really go ahead and start finalizing a lot of those smaller details and give you a high level overview of that. And remember, the reason why this is so absolutely critical, and we've talked about this many times before, I want to go ahead and remind you here, is that what we're doing throughout this entire certification process is really provide you the foundation so that way you can go ahead and deliver your product. Remember, we talked about this and how we're doing this in reverse order because the most difficult aspect for beginners when getting started is, hey, but what do I sell? Do I have conviction in what I sell? Do I know how to be able to provide value to others? Because remember, the only reason anyone makes money, period, is because of the fact that they are able to provide value and then monetize that value, right? We've talked about this in previous trainings. I want to expand on this in detail when we get into the income and business training, but money is just a form of value. And if you want to be able to make money, you have to be able to exchange value with somebody else in proportion solution to the problem that you solve, so that way they can give you value in return, which is AKA the money that you're looking for. And so if you do not yet, as a beginner, have something to sell, you don't have a way to be able to provide value, you don't have a product, then it's going to be difficult for you to provide value to the marketplace in exchange for the money that you're looking for. And so it doesn't matter how amazing of a marketer you are. It doesn't matter how amazing of a salesperson you are. If you do not have something that is able to provide value, then you are going to have difficulty actually getting started. In fact, if you're just only good at marketing and sales and you have no product that provides value, you're actually a fraud. And so that's why what we're doing in this certification process is finalizing that. It's prepping you for that. And then once we actually get to the marketing and sales side, well, guess what? You already have a lot of that product side taken care of. Okay, so that's just another quick reminder around this entire process. So let's go ahead and really give you an overview of what's going to happen next as the entire process, and we walk you through that entire process A to Z. Okay, so this is going to be the diagram that we go ahead and break down for your version 1.0 launch. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and talk about what does the marketing side look like for your version 1.0 launch, what does the sales look like, as well as what does the product side look like. Okay, so on the marketing side of things, we've already talked about how we're going to be walking you through getting test and practice students from your warm market, because remember, this is what we're doing in the beginning. Doesn't mean this is how it works permanently. Doesn't mean that you're going to be working on getting clients and students from your friends and family for the rest of your life. This is not some MLM kind of thing. You need to be able to prep to get ready for colder markets. But right now, we're just focusing on that warmer market because it gets you momentum. And so what you're going to be doing for step one of this entire process is you are going to be booking the consults via the consult calendar, the strategy session calendar. And so you're going to go ahead and give the person the link and allow them to book using that link on your calendar based off of your availability. And you're going to go ahead and make sure that it actually does show up on your Google Calendar. Okay. Now, the other question that might come up here is that, do you have to use all of this tech stuff, all of the TCK stuff in order to actually book a call with, let's say, for example, hypothetically, your best friend who wants to support you in this career that they want to go ahead and start off with, right? Just as an example, just throwing this out there, right? And so the answer to that is no. You can go ahead and, if you choose to, bypass all of this tech stuff at this version 1.0 stage, because you might be already working with people who you are already familiar with, right? So if you're going to go ahead and help your, Uncle Joe lose weight, and he's like, hey, this is something that's really amazing for me, I've always wanted to do this, and you're going to be able to help me with this, it's a win-win. Well, hey, maybe you want to bypass that and say, hey, Uncle Joe, I'll just call you tomorrow at 5 p.m. And then that way you don't have to mess around with the link. That is another option if that is what you choose to do. Again, if you want to do it for practice and use the tech, you could do that as well. So there's a lot of options here depending on what is the easiest for you and what is not going to complicate things and make you not be in momentum. Next up, the other question that might come up here is how to actually introduce this to people so that way they will actually book, right? I can't just go ahead and send a link to my best friend or Uncle Joe and tell them, hey, just go ahead and book on this. They're like, well, what the heck is this? What's going on? Like, what's happening here? And so what we're going to do is we're actually going to walk you through the scripts step by step on how to actually do this with your warm market, because this is a different process when you're doing it for warm market versus hot market versus cold market. All of these are different processes, right? And so we're going to walk you through some example scripts on how you can frame this and talk to your warm market so that way they say, you know what, this is an awesome thing. I would love to jump on a consult with you and see if this is something that would be a good fit for me. Okay, so right now we're just going ahead and showing you what the overview of that process looks like, but don't worry, in the action time training, I'm going to walk you through that as well. Okay, so that is the first section here, which is all about booking the consult. And then what's going to happen next is that in between actually booking the consult and conducting the consult, what's going to happen in between is that you're going to have these consult workflow reminders, right? The strategy session workflow reminders that have been sent out to those people who have booked calls. That is going to have their Zoom link inside of there for their consult, okay? And that's also going to allow you to be able to keep an eye on TCK if your person actually messages, they say they got to reschedule. You're also able to go ahead and keep an eye on those text messages and emails and see if there's any typos in there, if there's any things you need to edit, if there's any things you need to change. All of that is giving you preparation to be able to go ahead and see if those things need to be tweaked. Because remember, these are like one-time projects. I can't even remember the last time we went in and edited our consult workflow reminders because we went ahead and perfected them pretty much. And then after that, boom, we've just used them for literally thousands of calls after that, right? So these are kind of like the one-time projects that you just want to go ahead and get done. And then when you're doing them in action and in momentum, because you've booked a consult with somebody who you're actually going to have a consultation with, then that allows you to be able to perfect those reminders. Okay, so that's happening in between. And then after that, what you're then going to be doing is you're then going to go ahead and actually conduct the consult. So what you're going to do is you're going to show up on Zoom at the time of the consult, okay? And you're going to go through the consult script, the strategy session script, and you're going to help the person that you are talking to understand why they might need to take action, okay? And then what's going to happen is at the end of the consult, if the person that you are talking to chooses to continue to work with you, okay, you're going to do three things. Number one, you're going to go ahead and collect cash, and you're going to go through the payment processor, send them the invoice, all of that kind of stuff. If this is a paid practice student, if this is somebody for charity, obviously that's a whole different process. You're going to have them go ahead and talk to them about what that looks like, get the screenshot, all of that kind of stuff, right? Number two, on that call, okay, this is what you're going to do before you hang up. On that call, you're going to book the kickoff call on the CC1 calendar, and you're also going to go ahead and make sure that it shows up on your Google Calendar, okay? And then number three, you're going to go ahead and get the student agreement signed. And so you're seeing here, what we're doing is step by step, walking you through getting the practice of how the system works. So that way, once you're actually getting more marketing and sales and you're busy with that, you're not having to worry about these one-time projects because you know how the entire system works, okay? So that's what you're doing when you're conducting the consult. Obviously, if you need more instructions on doing the strategy session, on doing the consult, you can go ahead and look at those trainings for that, all of the prep work we already talked about before, okay? Then, after that, you are then in between the time of the consult and the actual first coaching call number one. What's going to happen is two things. There's going to be the CC1 workflow reminders, and there's also going to be the preparation for CC1. Okay, so the CC1 workflow reminders, if you remember, we set those up. Those are going to be the instructions for when you have a new student, and that is going to provide them the kickoff intake form, the onboarding homework, all of that kind of reminders and all that kind of stuff. So this is going to be another chance for you to look through and perfect all of those maybe typos, the wordings around that. All of those are things you can go ahead and perfect and look over during this time. And then the second thing that's going to happen here is that you're going to go ahead and start to be able to prepare for CC1. So you're going to go ahead and be able to go ahead and keep an eye out for their intake form, right? You're going to keep an eye out on that. And then you're going to go ahead and use that once that comes in to prepare for CC1 based off of their goals and all of that kind of stuff. Number two, some students might also need the reminders. And then also in preparation of CC1, you're going to be able to say, hey, you know what? It's 2 days before the CC1. It's 1 day before CC1. Maybe a student hasn't yet filled out their intake form. And so you're going to be able to go ahead and have practice following up and reminding your new student that, hey, you got to fill out this intake form, fill out your onboarding homework, kind of do all that kind of stuff. And then number three is that you're also going to be able to take that time to prepare and set up the payments and the recurring invoices if needed, right? If this is a paid student, you're going to be able to go ahead and have practice doing all that admin work in that time as well, okay? Then after that, what's going to happen next is that you're going to go ahead and actually conduct coaching call number one with them, right? You're going to go ahead and make sure that you do everything that we talked about when we talked about actually going through the scripts around that. If you need to make any tweaks around that, all of that, you're going to conduct coaching call number one. You're going to go ahead and set up their goals, set up their foundations, all of that, right? And then you're going to go ahead at the end of that call, schedule the next week after that, okay? And then obviously you'll be able to go ahead and perfect all of the coaching call workflow reminders for that as well. And then finally, you're going to go ahead and walk them through the normal 12 coaching calls. Make sure you provide them support. Daily accountability is going to be very helpful for you to practice during this time. We've already talked a lot about that in the past. And you're going to really just go ahead and provide as much value as possible in order to help transform their life. Okay, so that's what you're doing here, is conducting the remaining coaching calls and then repeating the above steps for each new student that you have. Okay, and so that is what the entire process looks like, A to Z, when you are actually going ahead and walking your test and practice students through this. Because remember, what we're doing here is really allowing you to get comfortable with the product side of things and the logistics around the product side of things. So that way, once your focus on an ongoing basis happens to be on the marketing side, happens to be on the sales side, you are a little bit more rest assured, you're a little bit more calm because you understand what is the value that you provide. You understand how the logistics works. You understand how the daily accountability works. You understand how the payment processor works. You understand how the coaching calls work. All of that is coming together so that way your ongoing focus, in order for you to be able to actually make a consistent income with this, what we're going to talk about in the income and the business training, the game of money, is all focused on the marketing and sales side of things. And so that is what it looks like. That's what the entire A to Z process looks like, and how we are actually working on connecting all of it together. And then what's the next piece of this that I want to talk to you about inside of this training is really going ahead, and before we get into action time, talking to you about the important topic of making this your own, okay? Because I want to go ahead and make it very clear. As we start to get into action time training, it's very important for you to go ahead and start understanding the fact that you have 1000% permission to adjust, to tweak, to edit, to customize anything and everything that we have provided for you, okay? This was the entire purpose and the entire point of the done for you, do it yourself approach, is that all that we wanted is really to be able to go ahead and give you the foundations that you need in order to go out there and have that kickstart, so that way you can go ahead and start becoming resourceful and creative throughout this process. And so if you have been waiting for permission throughout this entire process, here is the permission that you need for the training curriculum, for your product. You do not have to do everything exactly the way that we have outlined it. Yes, take the foundations and run with it, right? But what was the entire goal of this entire program? It was to give you a launch pad for your career in this industry, right? And so make any changes that you feel might be better if they're going to go ahead and better serve your student. If you're going to go ahead and have data that suggests that, you know what, this other approach might actually be better. If it's going to become something that is more aligned with maybe your personality, the way that you like to do things, there is no right or wrong with this, okay? So you can tweak and edit things in order to make the product more aligned with maybe a topic that you are more passionate about. If you want to go ahead and tweak things so that way your students and clients will get better results, include that in your product, no problem. In fact, when you look at the entire RWA curriculum so far, chances are that you have not ever been inside of a program like this ever before. Why? Because this is us. It's unique. It's something that we created based on our own experience, based on our own knowledge, based on our own experimentation. It took us years of experimenting with students in the one-on-one and hybrid model to see what worked and what didn't work, right? And so with more and more reps, we started to get even more and more excited, more and more aligned with sharing this specific message throughout all of these trainings and throughout this entire program, because it was in alignment with who we were and what we wanted to provide to the world, okay? And so yes, you can do the same with your curriculum and your product. You do not want to be a remote control student who expects to be spoon-fed and follow blindly, because that is just not going to work in business, period, okay? We're telling you right now, we do not want you tied to RWA's hips for the rest of your life. We want you to be empowered to go out there and understand the principles behind this, so that way you can further customize this according to what is important for you. And so even though we have the basic meal and the ingredients and the recommendations that we are providing, you have to bring your own spices to the equation in order for it to be an actually good meal. And so we've talked about this many times before, the quote from Albert Einstein: education is not the learning of facts, but the training of the mind to think. And so the ultimate goal and the ultimate result and the ultimate outcome of this program is true education. Not the memorization of facts or the tactics, but the principles behind those tactics. So that way you can actually think through these problems on your own. You can flex your resourceful muscles and you understand the frameworks that'll empower you to be successful with this long term on your own, okay? But the biggest thing throughout this, even though I am empowering you to go out there and do this on your own, the biggest thing is you just want to make sure that you are doing this along with momentum and action and not in replacement of it. Because there's a very fine line here, because based off what I just said around, hey, tweak it and customize it and do all that kind of stuff, there's a very fine line when I'm speaking to beginners who are just getting started, in which they take those words out of context, misunderstand them, and then say, okay, you know what? Instead of momentum and action, I'm going to now spend the next 5-6 months tweaking and customizing my entire program. That is not what I said. And that's exactly why I want to go ahead and give you a very big warning right now, is because even though you have permission to adjust and tweak and edit and customize, does not mean that you should do all of that. You want to be careful and beware of falling into the trap of, I have to tweak this, otherwise it's not going to work. I want to make this extremely clear. Everything that you have been provided so far throughout this entire program is ready for you out of the box, enough for you to go out and make $100,000 with it. Everything out of the box, no adjustment needed. How do we know? because we've done it. We're not just going ahead and reading a book and then talking about this theoretically. This is the real life stuff that we know actually does work. And so any additional resistance, overcomplication, overthinking, inaction that you do that prevents your momentum to take action is simply you stepping over that line from being an amateur, newbie, beginner, which we've said many times before. Being a beginner is awesome. There is no problem with that at all. But when you start to overcomplicate things and overthink things, okay, what ends up happening is you then step over that line from being just a beginner student to becoming a student who starts to wear the failure uniform. Because trying to tweak your product and your curriculum and spending all of this time on it when you have zero money coming in to your remote wellness practice and you have zero active students or clients, well, guess what? That's just now you wearing the failure uniform and crossing over that line. Okay, so you always want to make sure that you are being cognizant and conscious of where your energy is going. You're not just spending it in a whole bunch of different directions, and you are actually focused on the action that's going to push the needle forward. That is the most important thing. You do not want to major in the minors, and you want to always keep the main thing the main thing. And so if that means, hey, you got to spend some time working on product, by all means, please, but do not make it to the point where there's a fine line and you now step over that line and you don't have enough action, you're not doing enough momentum, and now you're thinking too much about the product and tweaking it and customizing it and all of that kind of stuff. Okay, so this is the very big and very important warning that I wanted to go ahead and talk to you about. Okay, but overall, what you're going to notice is that your transformation program is absolutely going to evolve with action, okay? Because when you do it with action and with momentum, naturally it's going to go ahead and evolve. How? Well, what's going to happen is that you're going to go ahead and start off and you're going to be using the scripts and the templates and all that kind of stuff that we provide. And then naturally, as you're talking, because you are not us, because you have your own unique experiences, as you're using what it is that we talk about, which is X, you're going to maybe start adding, let me talk about Y, because I have a little bit more experience around that, right? Maybe I'm a mother, maybe I'm a father, maybe I have a different element around this, maybe based off of the job that I have, maybe I'm a physician, maybe I'm a nurse, maybe I've been in sales before. So the client that I'm talking to, the student that I'm talking to resonates with this. So I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of that, right? A little bit of different spices here. And now I'm talking about why. And then guess what? I expand on why a little bit more and I get really good on talking about that. And that leads me to then talk about maybe Z, because now that I've done it a few times, I can now really start to make it a consistent thing inside of my coaching calls and throughout my entire product. And I'm getting more practice with it, right? And then what you find is that, man, now that I've started talking about, these kinds of things around maybe stress around being a parent, stress around having your job, having a commute, all these kinds of things, right? Because I'm bringing my own spices to this basic meal, right? Then what you find is that your students start getting value out of what it is that you're talking about. And then eventually you're just a general health coach. You're not just specialized maybe in only weight loss or something. And you're actually somebody that is good. Like people actually want to listen to you. Every word that comes out of your mouth is so dang valuable because you've been putting in the reps. And now what happens is that your business starts to grow, right? This is how the evolution process happens. And then what happens is that as your business starts to grow, you actually start to get good at making money and running a business because of the fact that you did all of the above. And so in the beginning when you started, maybe talking about money and running a business and doing all that kind of stuff, you weren't good at it because you were struggling with that. You were in a scarcity mindset. But then as you got good at this other topic and talking about it and providing value, all of a sudden the making money and the running business part started to become more and more effortless for you as you started to learn, right? And then what happens then is you go ahead and add inside of your program a little bit of, hey, let's talk about business a little bit. Hey, let's talk about wealth a little bit. Hey, let's go ahead and talk about budgeting your finances, right? Let's go ahead and talk about how you budget your finances for healthy food, right? You start adding some other layers and elements into it. And then guess what? Before you know it, you're now a business coach who's pretty good at this. And so now you have both health and business skill set in your tool belt, and you can make your program and your product even more valuable. And so this is how the evolution process happens as you expand and grow without even knowing it, just by sticking to the process and mastering one level and then moving up from there, right? Every single level of this entire game has multiple of these knowledge and rep kind of cycles that is going on, right? You start off in the beginning going out and becoming more of a general remote wellness practitioner, a general health coach, right? You're talking about general remote wellness practices, right? And you're just consciously incompetent with that. But the more you push through, you eventually get to the point where you're unconsciously competent in that. And then that allows you to then go into another cycle and you can then work on another aspect of things. And then all of a sudden, as you push through with that and you get really good at the skill of pushing through the valley of despair, despair, well, guess what? You're now unconsciously competent on talking about another skill set, another domain of life. And then you go ahead and go through another cycle from there. This is how it works as long as you develop that grit, that resilience, that relentlessness in order to actually keep on pushing. And this is going to be a theme that you're going to see that we talk about throughout the entire Action Time training. But the biggest thing that as we talk about evolving your program, the biggest thing you want to do is you always want to make sure that you have evidence of what you are talking about and that you are the product of your product, or at least on the path of becoming the product of your product. Because otherwise, you never want to go ahead and become somebody who is talking about things that they have never done or talking about things that they do not do. You don't want to end up in that perspective, okay? So you always want to make sure that you are riding this layers of learning, because once you actually push through this, then you're going to have so much more insight because you're either an enthusiast or you are an expert. An expert means that you've gone ahead and mastered it, or an enthusiast means that you are on the process of mastering, right? You got to have either or, right? Maybe you're not in the best health shape ever. You're not somebody who has a six pack and all this kind of stuff. You're not an expert, but that doesn't matter because you're an enthusiast. You're on the journey and you're just 5 or 6 steps ahead, maybe 2 steps ahead of your students. That's fine. But you either have to be an enthusiast or you have to be an expert. You can't be somebody who's talking about stuff that is just pulling stuff out of their butt and they have no idea what they're talking about, okay? And so you just want to make sure that you are careful and doing things properly. And as long as you do that, you're going to find that the range of education and skills that you are able to provide your students and your clients is going to expand over time. And it's only going to get more and more valuable. The product that you provide is going to get more and more valuable. And if you stick with this 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, as you develop personally, we've talked about why that makes remote wellness one of the best, if not the best, careers on the planet, is because as you develop, as you personally grow, your product becomes more and more valuable. Eventually you get to the point where you're able to go ahead and charge $4,800, $5,800, $6,000, $7,000, $8,000, $12,000 because of the fact that as you have grown, as your personal development has grown, your product is becoming more and more valuable as a result of that. And so this is how the entire process looks and how the evolution process works, okay? And how we've gone ahead and talked about connecting all of it together before we actually get into the Action Time training, okay? So that is what I wanted to go ahead and talk to you about on the tail end of this training. We talked about how everything connects together, as well as the warning and the evolution of your product. And so, like I said, this was a bridge training in order for us to go ahead and get to the Action Time training. As we start to close out this training, let's go ahead and talk about your engagement questions for this training. Very, very straightforward. What are your thoughts on this training? What did you like or enjoy about this training? Any takeaways, ahas, or anything like that? And then number 2, do you have any questions about anything that was discussed inside of the training? Again, this is just a bridge training, so it's going to be a lot more to the point, very succinct, but very important as well to just go ahead and summarize where we are so far. Of course, just remember, if you do have any questions, make sure you go ahead and tag the page RWA Coaches, and then make sure you go ahead and use the proper support measures for that. In terms of your action steps, very straightforward here because of the fact that this is a bridge training. Number 1, go ahead and watch and study this training in full. And then number 2, go ahead and complete the engagement questions for this training as well. And then with that being said, we're going to go ahead and very quickly and very soon get into the Action Time as we start to close out your entire certification process. It's very, very exciting, and I can't wait for you to go ahead and get through all of that. So just make sure that you have everything connected together. And with that being said, this is Coach Yasin checking out, and I will catch you inside of the next training.